This is one of those stories that's almost hard to believe. It's got all the makings of a blockbuster movie, a spectacular rise, and an even more spectacular public fall. We're starting in the super glamorous world of luxury real estate and ending up in the stone-cold reality of a federal courtroom. And at the center of it all, the Alexander brothers, whose massive empire is now totally overshadowed by a criminal trial that could, quite literally, put them behind bars for the rest of their lives.
And this quote right here, this is from the U.S. prosecutors, and it pretty much sums up their entire case. This isn't just a simple accusation. They're painting a picture of a calculated scheme, a plan to use all that wealth and influence to commit sexual assault. And that, right there, is the foundation for this huge federal sex trafficking trial against the three brothers that is getting started as we speak.
Okay, so let's break down exactly who we're talking about here. First, you've got Oren and Tal Alexander. These guys were, absolute titans in the luxury real estate world. Then there's their brother Alon, who is a security executive. Now, all three of them are in this together, as co-defendants, fighting for their freedom in a Manhattan courtroom.
All right, so let's just lay out the essential facts of where things stand today. You've got the three Alexander brothers, Tal, Oren, and Alon. They're facing federal sex trafficking charges. The trial, it's happening right now in a U.S. courthouse in Manhattan. And really, this trial is the culmination of a wild story that's been unfolding at lightning speed for almost 2 years.
So how did a story about real estate brokers even land in federal court? Well, you might be surprised to hear that this whole thing didn't start with the FBI kicking down doors. It didn't start with federal prosecutors. No, it all began much more quietly, with individual women who made the decision to speak out. Their actions were really the first sparks that ignited this massive firestorm.
Yeah, the first dominoes to fall here weren't these huge criminal charges that carry prison time. Not at all. It started with civil lawsuits. Personal actions brought by alleged victims who were looking for financial damages. But those early lawsuits, they absolutely set the stage for everything that was about to happen next.
And the timeline here is just wild. Things escalated incredibly fast. It starts in March 2024 with just 2 civil lawsuits filed against Oren and Alon. By June of that same year, the story had absolutely exploded in the media. And then, all through that summer, more and more alleged victims came forward, which eventually pulled the eldest brother, Tal, into the whole controversy too.
Now, you might be wondering how these old allegations could even lead to a lawsuit. And that's a great question. The answer is a really important piece of legislation called the Adult Survivors Act. Basically, this New York law created a special 1-year window where the normal time limit, the statute of limitations, for filing civil sexual assault cases was just gone. It meant that survivors could sue even for things that happened years or decades ago. It opened a door that had been legally sealed shut.
And the claims that were filed under that act were frankly deeply disturbing. We're talking about allegations of sexual assault and rape going back to 2010 and 2012. The lawsuits mentioned suspected drugging, forcible restraint during sex, and what the accusers described as a long-standing pattern of behavior. It's crucial to note, though, that from the very beginning, the brothers have denied every single one of these allegations.
So as these stories started to break and go public, the professional fallout was just swift and catastrophic. The real estate empire that Oren and Tal Alexander had spent years building, it started to crumble under the sheer weight of it all.
The first really big blow actually came from inside the company. Faced with just immense public pressure, both Oren and Tal stepped down from their leadership roles at the firm, official partners. And this was the brokerage they co-founded, the one they built into an absolute powerhouse.
And their departure, it was like a dam breaking. It triggered a total exodus. All that negative press spooked the top agents, and suddenly you had key players in huge markets. We're talking LA, New York, Miami. They all started heading for the exits. The firm was just bleeding talent, which made it even more unstable.
This all led to a complete collapse at the top. By August 2024, they tried to negotiate a way to save the brand and distance it from the Alexanders, but that failed. So, the firm's other co-founders, they walked away too. It effectively gutted the entire original leadership team.
And as you can imagine, it wasn't just about their reputation. The financial cracks started showing big time. Their partner brokerage, a company called Side that handled all their back-end operations, actually sued them for an unpaid loan of $1.6 million. This wasn't just another legal headache, it was a huge red flag that the business was in serious financial trouble. Now that case did eventually get settled, but the damage was already done.
Okay, and this is where everything changes. This is the critical turning point in the story. As their whole business world was imploding, the situation went from being a civil and professional crisis to something much, much more serious, a full-blown federal criminal investigation.
I mean, you had dozens of women coming forward and sharing similar stories with major media outlets. The sheer volume of it all became impossible for law enforcement to ignore. All of these public accounts are what prompted the FBI to step in and launch their own huge investigation into the brothers' conduct.
And it is so important to understand just how drastically the stakes changed here. A civil lawsuit, that's basically one person suing another, usually for money. The standard of proof is what they call a preponderance of the evidence. You just have to prove it's more likely than not. But federal charges, now you're up against the full power of the United States government. The goal isn't money, it's prison time. And the government has to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the highest bar in our entire legal system. The game had completely, fundamentally changed. And that whole investigation came to a super dramatic conclusion in December of 2024. That's when FBI agents arrested all three brothers, Tal, Oren, and Alon, down in Miami. And the charge that got them put in handcuffs wasn't just assault, it was federal sex trafficking.
So, with the brothers in custody, the government started to lay its cards on the table. They began revealing the evidence they'd gathered and spelling out the specific charges the brothers would have to face at trial.
Now, one of the most talked about pieces of evidence that prosecutors have is a hard drive. It was found in Tal Alexander's apartment, and according to court documents, this drive has explicit videos of the brothers with different women. The filings claim that in these videos, the women appear to be intoxicated and are being physically manipulated.
So after a grand jury looked at all the government's evidence and decided there was enough to go to trial, they handed down the formal charges. In the final tally, it's 12, a total of 12 federal counts against the three brothers, covering everything from conspiracy and sex trafficking to sexual abuse. And the potential consequences here are just staggering. If they're convicted on these charges, the brothers are facing a mandatory minimum of 15 years, all the way up to life in federal prison.
And that's how we got here. All of that history, the civil suits, the business completely collapsing, the FBI investigation, it has all led to this very moment. All eyes are now on that Manhattan courthouse, where this incredibly high-stakes trial is finally underway.
So what can we expect? Well, the trial itself is expected to last for about a month. And it's worth remembering that ever since their arrest back in late 2024, the brothers have been held without bail in a detention center in Brooklyn, just waiting for this day in court.
The jury has been selected, the stage is set, and testimony is about to begin. So really, everything now boils down to one central question, doesn't it? Will the prosecutors be able to convince that jury of the brothers' guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? That's what we're all about to find out.